Tiny vampire from outer space that's bitey. Escaping Umbra. Shadow Khan, Tiny Vampire, Book 1. Chapter 1, Escaping Umbra. Shadow forced herself out from the pile of blankets where she'd been sleeping and flopped across the bed on her back. Good evening, Shadow. The time is now 8 p.m. The sun has been down 6 minutes. Shadow groaned and huffed at the talking clock. Why she bought that was beyond her. The voice was far too cheery for this time of night. The sun was barely set and she was still exhausted. Unfortunately, she had to get up, find something to eat, and get to work. She had prisoners to interrogate and bite. Shadow stumbled out of bed and into the kitchen. She opened the refrigerator door and groaned. Every shelf was empty. She checked the crisper drawers and freezer. Also empty. She closed the door and sighed. There were 2 blood bags in there last night. Now there were none. It was unlikely anyone broke into her house to get them. Anyone who knew she was Jackass Umbra's child. That knowledge was enough to keep everyone out of her dwelling. The only possible solution was that she slept-ate them. She pressed the button on the screen to see the last 10 times the refrigerator was opened. Since she'd just opened it, she disregarded the last time. The next most recent time was 3 p.m. Damn it! Shadow didn't remember getting out of bed, but she obviously had. Just to be certain, she brought up the information on the front and back doors. No one had opened the back door in a month. The last time the front door was opened was last night at 4 a.m. That was when Shadow arrived home, or close enough to it that she didn't doubt she was the last person to enter or leave the house. Shadow hoped there was food at the blood bank. If there wasn't, she'd be hunting it, which would make her late to the interrogation building. She'd started to walk out the door when she realized she was naked. She started to walk out the front door when she realized she was naked. It was a quick trip upstairs to throw a summer dress on and strap her sandals to her feet. Then she tossed her cloak over her shoulders and walked out of her 2-story house. The blood bank was down the street, and she could see the line from outer space that's bitey. That wasn't a good sign. Shadow Khan, Shadow walked the block and a half down to the front door anyway. Is this the line for the food? Umbra? Shadow asked. Shadow forced herself out from the pile of blankets where she'd been sleeping, and the rumor is that they are rationing on her back. 1 blood bag per vampire, Shadow, he said. The time is now 8 p.m. Shadow huffed. The sun has been down 6 minutes. Shadow groaned. 2 minutes, he said as he watched the little female vampire standing just beside the line. The voice was far too cheery for this time of night, but he could see the edges of her red hair, and she was still exhausted. Shadow looked at the line. Unfortunately, more vampires attacked themselves, find something to eat, and get to work. Oh, she had prisoners to interrogate and bite. How old are you? He asked. Judging by the way she was fidgeting out of bed and into the kitchen, she wasn't very old. She opened the refrigerator door and groaned. Every shelf was empty, Shadow said. She checked the crisper drawers, frowned and scanned the area, wondering where in Pluto's name her sire was. She closed the door and sighed. Stand here. There were 2 blood bags in there last night. Now there were none. It was unlikely anyone broke into her house to get them. Because I was about to tell you that she knew she was Jackass Umbra's child. Because I was about to tell you that knowledge was enough to keep everyone out of the line. But the only plausible solution, he said, was that she slept-ate them. He paused. She pressed the button on the screen to see the last 10 times the refrigerator was opened. When she just opened it, she disregarded the last time, just long enough to let him know she was recent time was 3 p.m. She was cool, and he could see her veins through her Shadow skin. Didn't remember getting out of bed, but she obviously had, as she marveled at the size of his hand. It was twice as big as hers. She brought up the information on the front and back doors. We'll make sure you get some food. No one had opened the back door. You can't let her get ahead of you. The last time the vampire door was opened was last night at 4 a.m. I've been waiting since before sundown. That was when Shadow arrived. So have I. And yes, close enough to it that she didn't doubt she was the last person to enter or leave the house. The tension in the line rose. Line cutters were highly frowned upon. Shadow hoped there was food. Marcus wasn't going to let this little red-headed vampire start. She'd be hunting it. Which would make her late behind him to the interrogation building. He grabbed the man's hand and started to walk out the door when she realized neither of us will need any food in this building. She started to walk out the neither of us will need any food in this building. Naked. It was a quick trip upstairs to throw a summer dress on and strap her sandals to the vampire's hand. Then he caught Shadow as she tried to bite shoulders and walked out of her two-story house. He expected more solidity in her body. The blood bank was down the street, but there was almost nothing there. She could see the line from half her perceived size. That wasn't a good sign. However, Shadow managed to get a hold of her down to the front door and the asshole behind them. Is this the line? She's 153, Shadow and your hand is bleeding. The vampire standing nearest the door. Do you want me to let go of her? She'll bite you 100 times before she finds a good vein. One blood bag per vampire. When he heard Shadow inhale, he bit his thumb on his other hand. Are they open? In her mouth. 2 minutes, he said, as he watched the little female vampire standing just the bones were out of the skin. He grimaced as they snapped back into place. He could see the edges of her red hair. He was outgunned and knew it. Shadow looked at the line. His patience was thin due to lack of food. Attacked themselves onto the end. I know she's hungry. I have children, and I remember when they were her age. How old are you? He watched Marcus as he by the way she was fidgeting on her feet. He was third in line, not 50. Starving. I never did that with mine. What does that do? The vampire frowned and scanned the area, wondering where in Pluto's name her sire was. Stand here. He motioned to the spot in front of him. Shadow stepped in front of him. Why? Because I was about to tell you that you should have woken earlier if you wanted to avoid the line. But you are up early, he said, for your age. He paused. I'm Marcus. He held out his hand. When she offered hers, he clasped it briefly, just long enough to let him know she was indeed starving. She was cool, and he could see her veins through her skin. Shadow, she said as she marveled at the size of his hand. It was twice as big as hers. Marcus nodded. We'll make sure you get some food. You can't let her get ahead of you, the vampire behind him said. I've been waiting since before sundown. So have I. And yes, I can, Marcus said. The tension in the line rose. Line cutters were highly frowned upon, but Marcus wasn't going to let this little red-headed vampire starve. When the vampire behind him took a swing, he grabbed the man's hand in a crushing grip. Attack me and neither of us will need any food in this building. Attack me and neither of us will need any food in this building. Let go of me, he said. Marcus released the vampire's hand. Then he caught Shadow as she tried to bite it. He expected more solidity in her body, but there was almost nothing there. Half her perceived size was her cloak. However, he managed to get a hold of her before she got a hold of the asshole behind them. She's 153 and your hand is bleeding. Do you want me to let go of her? She'll bite you 100 times before she finds a good vein. When he heard Shadow inhale, he bit his thumb on his other hand and stuck it in her mouth. The vampire flexed his hand. 2 of the bones were out of the skin. He grimaced as they snapped back into place. He was outgunned and knew it. His patience was thin due to lack of food. I know she's hungry. I have children, and I remember when they were her age. He watched Marcus as he forcefully calmed himself. He was third in line, not 50th. I never did that with mine. What does that do?